Total Grim Reaper remaining 0. Chuck Norris versus
be the inspiration for the next generation.
Yo, what up?
Education, teach the nation. Be the wisdom to the children of the village that were raised in Gloucester. Their imagination, foster acceleration, circumvent incarceration of the body and the mind. Change your hustle, not your grind. Cause there might come a time when you have to push past the gatekeeper
What up, bro?
and all the haters. I believe my way in, and that's it for greatness. My concept's amazing.
Hey. Hey. For that song, man, I felt like I had to hear him get that shit out there. Once again, I might release it as a single. Um on like the music streaming services. Appreciate it though. I show one of my coworkers, they're like, where the hell you find all them images? The internet, and they get like, where else? I'm not a journalist. I didn't go out and take these pictures, all this shit from the internet. But I put together a montage for that event I did yesterday too.
Oh, that's a deep cut. We must be the inspiration for the next generation. Seize each occasion, teach the nation. Leave the wisdom to the children of the village that were raised in Gloucester. Their imagination, foster acceleration, circumvent incarceration of the body and the mind. Change your hustle, not your grind. Cause there might come a time when you have to push past the gatekeeper and all the haters. I believe my way in, and that's it for greatness. My concept's amazing.
So I was able to get that video done. Yeah, there's so much visual content out there. All you gotta do is just take the time to find the images you want to use. That's it. It's not like you can't find it. You just gotta pick which ones you want to use. But a lot of people. I sent it to like a few people, and they really like that shit. Come on. Have a little snack real quick. I felt super hungry just now. So I'm having some yeah, don't judge me. Don't judge me. It was like a job fair for high school kids. Yes, I just play with VR all day. Oh, wait, no, can't let that go to waste. You be all right. Yeah, it's basically a job fair for high school students. I tried to scare the shit out of them as hard as I could. For one group of kids, there's three young guys. We're really into the VR shit. Where's the video I showed them? So I showed them this video.
8 leggings or Sculpt V2? Let's talk about which one is better for you. The Rivet technology is
So I showed one group of young guys that shit. And I was like, hey, bro. I said, that's y'all competition. I said, I ain't had to worry about that shit when I was your age. Other humans was my competition. Those are the only people I'm trying to compete against. And you know, my daily life as far as employment and advancing and all that shit. I ain't had to compete against humans and robots. Now, like y'all generation up for some other shit. So I like y'all need to be prepared for this, bro. Like that ass, y'all need to take your future as seriously as you possibly can, because this is no fucking joke. That the job market that I'm currently a part of will not be the same job market you enter. And you guys are fucking sophomores and what is it, juniors and seniors? Y'all about to either go to college, which is still super expensive. And if you take that route, whatever degree you attempt to acquire, you need to make sure it's going to be useful in the next fucking 20 years. And that's super hard to determine right now. So, on top of knowing all the chat bots and all the AI systems and all the computer stuff, you need to know how to work power tools, how to read the tape measure, how to build, how to cut. You need to know how to work with your fucking hands. Because the robots are going to take most of the computer jobs away, which has been the easy lane for a lot of people. I'll be an accountant. I'll be an analyst. I'll do this. I'll do that, where you can just sit at a desk and type on the computer all day. Man, them fucking jobs is gone. I'll be a graphic designer. I'll be a coder. Nah, that shit is done, man. So, y'all got to figure shit out that we didn't have to figure out. And for the simple fact that we didn't have to figure that part out, I don't got no guidance for you other than good luck. Good luck. Be as versatile as you can. Learn as many different types of skills as you can. Once again, not just computer skills. And yeah, buckle up, Buttercup, because we're in for a bumpy ride. Especially if we lose the petrodollar in the next 5 or 10 years, man. Somebody who's 17 now, by the time they're 27, she's gonna be looking dire. Boozy, oh, what a doozy. Yo, Boozy, you seen my new video? My music video I made? Diagonal Move Streets. It's just a clip video. Just took a bunch of different clips from like free stock stuff on the internet and just posted it all together. And called it a video. I ain't actually like go out with a camera and film no shit or nothing like that. Just put together a bunch of clips. Wendy saw the video. Hey, a video is a video, nigga. Does it have moving images? And it's a video then. I don't care how you got it. Is the pictures moving? Okay. Fish needs eggs out this jars. Like trying to win a prize out the claw grab machine. Yo, what's good, guys? Like I was just telling Boozy, we got our video finished. I'll play it real quick right here, but then we're gonna start painting. It's already 4 o'clock. I'm behind on the times.
Trap House Entertainment. Trap House Entertainment. Situation dire, I'll never call them sire. They ain't nothing to do with my blood sucking vampires. Gotta send a quagmire every time land pirate tired of the sad tire. Getting tight like they ain't trying to spread the news through the wire. Pedo pizza party, and we know who the buyers. Epstein and Jekyll Island, the files just keep piling. They need them to be silent for carrots. They keep smiling, they leaking it like a fountain. Evidence like a mountain. Hit dogs start howling the truth. Keep it 1,000. Corruption is astounding and it seems that we're surrounded by homicidal maniacs, all drunk on power. Elitist cowards walking the center of the final hours. I've been taking notes ever since they knocked down the tower. We came from the same start and built from the same parts. On the difference is we not cut from the same cloth. They try to lock us in the dark, lost like some cave up, but I'ma let the truth shine because I got a brave heart. We came from the same start and built from the same parts. On the difference is we not cut from the same cloth. They try to lock us in the dark, lost like some cave up, but I'ma let the truth shine because I got a brave heart. Been talking about this shit for years because I got a brave heart. I go man is run by psychopaths and they got insane thoughts. Global domination, but the world's about to change course. Now we strike back and hit the bully with the same force. Behold the pale horse that cause terror and warmonger. More damage, more death, more bombs, more hunger, war crimes, genocide, taking lives and they plunder IDF and the Iron Dome. Got me feel the thunder, the screams from a time of heart. How much does a Holocaust is not considered a loss? If it came from the boss, the Goya on the under y'all, always never underdog. Operating under law, let me check my battle losses. 1947, they've been making outrageous, but the Bible pages say they are the synagogue of Satan. Their way running out of pages with the leaders of the nation, so we better cut time before our greatness was Satan. Left feet on red, left feet on red, left feet on red.
Yeah, but that's just the last shot right there. Was that fucking expect resistance, nigga? I ain't gonna get over on everybody, my guy, not all the time. God damn, this is a very unpopular war. I hope more military personnel just start backing down. He's like, I'm not even about to risk my life for this shit, bro. I'd rather just go be a plumber. I'd rather go do something else for a living instead of dropping bombs and murdering. Cause they talking about gonna put boots on the ground. If the soldiers themselves refuse to go and do whatever, man, this should have. We need to. Oh, damn, for entertainment purposes only. Oath to our government. For entertainment purposes only. Don't believe nothing I say. We need to overthrow our government. Entertainment purposes only. But if our military personnel are the men and women of our armed forces, refuse these orders to go kill innocent people and drop bombs on innocent people in cities, we could really have a true change. The America's might is its military. And that's what we use to bully everybody. And all it is for the young men and women to say, I'm not doing this shit. You know? Would that day ever happen? I don't know. We can only hope. All right. Gonna focus on this part of the sleeve here. We're just adding a few little highlights here and there. Not even doing a lot because it don't need a lot. So we ain't trying to do the most. We trying to do enough. You know, enough is enough. And once we get enough done, we'll stop. You know, don't need to go overboard or exaggerate or be extra. Enough is enough. You know, sometimes it's hard to figure out when you're at that point to say, oh, I've had enough. Very, very bullish. And it appears that they don't answer to the American public. I'm gonna have to find a new beat soon. I'm gonna have to start writing something soon.
How far can your apps go?
81.
44.
We got 59 today. We ain't even hit
Foundation
60.
set. Structure's good to go. Now, build it up from there. Want to write your own code?
Right now, somewhere in the Persian Gulf, a tanker captain is sitting in his wheelhouse staring at a radio that hasn't stopped crackling for 3 weeks. He has 40,000 tons of crude oil below his feet, a crew of 22 men depending on him, and a single question burning in his mind that no insurance company, no navy, and no government on earth can answer for him right now. Can I pass through the Strait of Hormuz? And if I try, will I make it out the other side? That question, asked by thousands of captains, traders, energy ministers, and heads of state right now, is not just about oil. It is not just about missiles or military strategy or which side is winning a war that started 19 days ago. That question is about something far bigger. It is about who controls the financial architecture of the entire modern world. It is about a 52-year-old system that has kept the United States at the center of global power since 1974. And it is about a single sentence spoken by a senior Iranian official to CNN just days ago that may turn out to be the most consequential statement made in this entire conflict. Not a missile, not a drone, a sentence. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand why economists, geopolitical strategists, and financial analysts are calling what Iran just did the most dangerous financial weapon ever deployed in the history of modern warfare. And you are going to understand why the missiles, as horrifying as they are, may not even be the real story of this war. Let us go back to the beginning, February 28th, 2026. Before dawn in Tehran, the skies were quiet. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was in the middle of indirect negotiations with American diplomats mediated through Oman about a possible new nuclear agreement. Iran's foreign minister had publicly stated just 3 days earlier that a historic deal was within reach. The diplomatic channels were open. The language being used was cautious but optimistic. Nobody who was paying attention expected what happened next. In the early hours of February 28th, the United States and Israel launched simultaneous coordinated strikes in Iran. Hundreds of targets across dozens of cities hit within a compressed window of time designed to overwhelm Iranian air defenses and command structures. The stated objectives were clear. The United States said it was acting to destroy Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Israel said it was acting in self-defense and to create conditions for regime change. What neither side said publicly, but what reporting from the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post has since revealed, is that the decision to strike came after sustained lobbying from both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who had multiple direct phone calls with President Trump in the days before the attack, urging him to move. Within hours of the first strikes, Ali Khamenei was dead. The man who had led the Islamic Republic for 34 years, who had survived assassinations, sanctions, protests, and wars, was killed in the opening hours of a conflict he had been trying to negotiate his way out of. Iranian state media confirmed his death just after midnight on March 1st. And in that moment, something shifted in the region that no missile could have predicted or controlled. Because here is what the strategic planners in Washington and Tel Aviv may not have fully accounted for. Killing a supreme leader in the middle of diplomatic negotiations does not end a war. It ends diplomacy. It removes the one figure who had the authority, the legitimacy, and the institutional relationships to negotiate a settlement. Iran's political system, built around the concept of supreme clerical authority, does not have a simple succession mechanism that produces a moderate pragmatist on demand. What it produced was Mojtaba Khamenei, the assassinated leader's son, who issued his first public statement warning that attacks on Israel and U.S. military assets would continue indefinitely unless every American military base in the Middle East was evacuated. That is not a negotiating position. That is a war footing. And Iran went to war. Within the first 72 hours, Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones across the region. The targets were not random. They were surgical in their geopolitical logic, even when they were imprecise in their physical execution. Iranian missiles hit U.S. military facilities in Bahrain, where the Navy's Fifth Fleet is headquartered. They hit bases in Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. They hit U.S. positions in Iraq. A drone struck a British military base in Cyprus. The message being sent was not just military, it was political. Iran was telling every government in the region, every government that had allowed American forces to station on their soil, that proximity to the United States now came with a price tag. By March 5th, Iran had escalated to its most consequential move yet. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps declared the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed to vessels linked to the United States, Israel, and their Western allies. And right there in that declaration is where this story stops being about missiles and starts being about money. The Strait of Hormuz is a strip of water approximately 21 miles wide at its...
Okay, so this is boring and frustrating and upsetting, but I do like to try to think logically about some of the thinking patterns and actually, what these elitist groups are trying to do and maneuver us into. So honestly, guys, I do want some feedback on this. Do you really think that, the situation is a certain group of people basically control a very important waterway, It's a part of their national land. It's a part of their country. This waterway is a part of their country. They control that shit, and it's very valuable because it moves, billions of dollars. You're going to attack these people whose important waterway is in their national territory and think they won't do anything with that. They have access to it. So everybody keeps saying they didn't think this through. They didn't think this through. How can you not have thought that through? Do you think that our government did not take that into consideration? Yes or no? That the Iranian government would seize total control over who has access to this waterway. Do you think we thought about that? Because that kind of seems to me personally, that seems like one of the first things that I would like question. And we're sitting down at the war table and we're like, all right, well, we're going to do this. Okay, that's fine. To make a decision we're going to bomb them. Great. You really want to do this? All right, fine. Okay, so after we bomb them, then what? What's our next move? What do we assume their initial move would be? If we bomb them, what do you think they're going to do next? Well, if we kill their supreme leader, maybe, when the regime falls, the nation will erupt in chaos and civil war and infighting will ensue. And then we can kind of usher in, a guy that we want to be in control. Okay, that's a great scenario. That's a really strong plan. Kill their leader, cause disruption and chaos, infighting, and then we usher in the solution that they're looking for. But the solution is our puppet. Great, that's awesome. We bomb them and then that. Okay, but what if that doesn't happen? And then what do we do? What if they don't collapse as a unified culture? What if they don't collapse as a unified nation just because we killed their supreme leader and they really decide to fight back? Then what do we do? Well, we'll just keep bombing them. Until what? Until they give up. Okay, that's great because we got tons of bombs and we can threaten them with nukes. But what if they don't give up? Then what? Are we going to nuke them until they stop? Like, you would think so, but Trump is an idiot. Bro, this seems like the waterway is a part of their country. It's not the Panama Canal, motherfuckers. But I guess it is. I guess they feel like, yeah, even in Panama, we'll own this shit too. And we'll give it back to you guys in 80 years. Why? Well, because we're the big bad wolf. And the same thing with the Straits. It doesn't matter if we bomb them. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Close down the fucking waterway? You know what? That's exactly that's exactly what they did. And I would think, okay, so that would be my thing. If they control, isn't that important to like everybody? Not to just us, but to everybody. So are we going to take control of the waterway? And if we do decide to take control over the waterway, do we have enough manpower and artillery power to maintain control, and for how long? Because not just us, the world is oil dependent. The industrial age, we came up with a lot of great inventions, a lot of them. And 90% of them use crude oil in some form or variation. It just is what it is. We've become addicted to oil, and our world Not just the US, not just China. Everybody runs on oil. All of our products, any plastics, any cellophanes, any styrofoams, any rubbers, it's all the same stuff. Most jellies, like Vaselines and stuff like that, that's petroleum. All the same stuff. It's in every fucking thing. And now they've cut us off from access to the one resource that we all use for everything. For everything. I feel like somebody should have thought about that shit, man. Anybody thought about that shit, bro? Come on, man. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I will admit that. I'll be the first person to admit that. But if you give me enough time, just give me the question and let me sit with it for a minute. Don't rush me. Let me think, nigga. Let me think. And I can, I would just try to be logical. And what they say, I forgot who said it, but sometimes the simplest answer is normally the correct answer. I just try to break it down to a point where I can understand it. And if I can understand it, and it still seems like a dumb idea, we probably shouldn't go that way, man. I'm telling you now, it sounds stupid to me. Let's attack the people who control the waterway that grants us access to about 25% of the world's crude oil. You know what? We all got the internet, man, and we done all seen what we done did to goddamn Saddam and Venezuela and everybody else Gaddafi, everybody who don't want to give us their oil. You know what I'm saying? These the Kuwait, they burning their oil fields. Goddamn Desert Storm. I'm old enough to remember Desert Storm. Y'all can't. Hey, man. If I can remember that shit, there other people who remember that shit too, who my age, who grew up with that shit. And you know what? Some of these people my age who remember Desert Storm do? They in governments. They members of governments in other countries. And who can still remember, like, yeah, America been doing people dirty for a while. The way we tell our history, that's not the same way every other country tell the story, bro. They don't tell the story. We not always the liberators. We not always the bringers of democracy when other people tell what happened when America came to their land. And now it's to the point where people just like, fuck it. We might get beat up, but y'all motherfuckers gonna know y'all been in the fight. You know? Well, we want to resume peace talks. No, we don't want that. Y'all done hit us over the head too many times with that shit. You know what? Matter of fact, y'all just don't get no oil no more. Y'all just find your oil from somewhere else, man. And everybody over here, if y'all fucking with them Americans, we ain't fucking with y'all. So everybody gonna have to figure out some new shit. Now everybody need to figure out some new shit.
Narrowest point connecting the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. It is the most important body of water on Earth from an economic perspective. Every single day before this war, approximately 20 million barrels of petroleum passed through that strait. Add to that a significant share of the world's liquefied natural gas, much of it from Qatar.
You can make how much?
You begin to understand why the U.S. Energy Information Administration once described the Strait of Hormuz as the world's most critical oil choke point. There is no substitute. There's no workaround that can fully replace it. The deficit, the oil that cannot be rerouted, is approximately 12 million barrels every single day. 12 million barrels every single day. When the strait effectively closed, the global oil market responded the way financial markets always respond to existential supply shocks. It panicked. Brent crude, which had been trading around $70 per barrel before the war began, surged past $100 within days.
God damn, I don't got no fucking stock in the oil barons. Motherfuckers. bro. Hey, these motherfuckers, everybody guapping off of this shit right now, dog. Whoever can move a little bit of oil, man, they guapping right now. Damn, you know what? I'm gonna have to look at my portfolio and see if I can squeeze in a piece of a teeny slice of a share from goddamn BP or Exxon or goddamn somebody. Let me get a little bit. Hey, hold up. Let me get a little bit of that. Let me get a little bit for them stocks reach $1,000 a pop. Yeah. You know, little slice of the pie. Everybody about to go broke. I'm going broke too, but the little pennies I can, I'm about to make that shit with them oil motherfuckers, man. I want that Arab money. Yeah, them stocks going up. What? Hey.
By mid-March, analysts at major investment banks were no longer treating $200 per barrel as an extreme scenario. CNBC reported that top traders were openly saying it should not be ruled out. The U.S. Energy Information Administration raised its 2026 WTI crude oil price forecast by $20 per barrel in a single adjustment, the largest single revision in its recent history. And the consequences of oil at these prices are not abstract. They are immediate, personal, and global. Gasoline prices spike, heating costs surge, food prices rise because food production and distribution are both deeply dependent on fuel. Airline tickets.
Everything, gas, man. How you gonna run the combines and the collectors and the harvesters to get the fucking strawberries? Gas. All right, when you get the strawberries harvested and shit, goddamn, how you gonna separate, clean, organize, package, wrap them shits? Gas. When that shit all done, how you gonna transport it and get it to the store? Gas. Well, you think goddamn eggs ain't about to be $10? Gas about to be goddamn $8. Yo, this shit right here about to cripple a lot of people. I can't afford it. I'm gonna let you know right now. I'm gonna let you know right now, bro. When shit hit the fan, I can't afford it, man. I might have to start stripping or, you know what I'm saying, selling a little smack on the side or something. Gotta find me a smack connect. You know what I'm saying, start back up my entrepreneurship. I'll be downtown on the square with some prints of my art, standing out there with some booty shorts on. Hey, anybody want to buy this beautiful artwork? Come on, man. Got me on the corner with some booty shorts on, trying to keep the lights on, man. You know what I'm saying? Be one of them people outside the tax place spinning the sign. You know what I'm saying? It's my second job. I'm just trying to make ends meet. Just trying to make ends meet out here, man. It's shit hard to survive. Sound like the shit about to hit the fans for real, people. Once again, purposely trying to scare motherfuckers. Just be prepared enough. You know, just be prepared enough. Because the same, well, not this guy, it's the same conversation, but another analyst was saying, you know, it takes a couple of weeks for the trickle down effect. Like right now, yeah, gas, and they're trading everything high, and gas already went up in the past couple of days, but we're not really feeling like the full effect of this shit yet. Because the shelves been stocked, and you know, some supplies are on standby waiting for us. But the next shipment, that shit not on time. And the fact that these motherfuckers also destroying the refineries. even if things do settle down and some kind of agreement is reached or whatever, bro, ceasefire or something, a lot of the infrastructure already fucked up too. How long it gonna take to build back up the refinery so we can get the goddamn the kerosene, the gas, the jet fuel, the petroleum jelly, and all that shit separated out? On a quick side note, on my way to the prison this morning, I have to pass by a print shop. They make like t-shirts and sweaters and print stuff like that. You know, goddamn. So I'm headed to the prison. Goddamn, an ambulance come speed up behind me. I pull over. He go by. Just so happy he turned. I turn behind the ambulance. Ambulance don't pull up in the goddamn print shop parking lot. I say, damn, somebody that got stuck in the press. I ain't never been in that place in particular, but I can imagine like they some kind of shit in there to fuck your ass up. If you ain't paying attention, motherfucker lose a finger. I get an arm crushed in a press machine or a roller or some shit like that, or something fall on you. When I worked in the factories and warehouses, I always stayed super cautious. I wore all my PPE. If they say wear gloves, put your gloves on. Your eye protection. I always wear steel-toe boots. The last factory I worked in, that shit was loud. You had to wear earplugs all day. But I'd rather do that than go fucking deaf. Motherfuckers being they all reckless. And they driving the forklift, stacking that shit extra high so they can only make one fucking trip. Bro, you on the clock getting paid. You driving the forklift, calm your ass down, bro. Trying to do too much. Now, if you fuck that machine up or you fuck yourself up, then what? I don't play around with them people's shit. My girlfriend asked me like why I got so much tissue and stuff. I can remember, bro. This is no lie. Like ever since I was still living in Florence in 2005, I remember I had a girl come over and she went in the bathroom, and I've always bought like cases of toilet tissue, like when it says the 24 rolls or whatever. I always buy that. Because I hate shopping anyway. I've been bulk shopping forever because I don't want to go to the fucking store every week to buy the same shit. Motherfuckers be going there buying a 4-pack of toilet paper. A 4-pack of toilet paper? Bro, especially if you got women in the house, you're going to run out. And you're going to need that shit in like 3 more days. Like, why don't you just buy a case of tissue? Anyway, I remember a long time ago, I had a chick over and she go to the bathroom. She come out, she was like, nigga, why you got so much tissue? Hey, she was really confused. She's like, why you got a whole case of tissue in there? I thought you lived by yourself. I said, I do. But I just said the same thing. I don't like fucking going to the store this time. I'm gonna buy tissue every goddamn other week, man. I'll buy that shit once every few months. But right now I got like 2 cases of tissue. I got like 2 cases of tissue, 2 cases of goddamn paper towels. 20 when I buy rice, I get like the big ass 20-pound bags of rice. I don't fuck around, man. I ain't trying to come here and buy this shit again every other week. Most time when I go grocery shopping, man, I just get fresh produce and shit that I eat regularly, like my yogurts, fruits and shit like that. I'll buy that every week. I'm not getting dish detergent and laundry detergent and tissue and all that shit. I'm not buying that shit every week. Get the big bottle, get the big bag, or get the big box, and don't worry about that shit. And I feel like the stuff I do stock up on is still not really like that shit. Don't got down make me feel like I need a Sam's Club membership or something like that, because I ain't trying to buy a fucking gallon of ketchup or a 5-gallon bucket of mayonnaise. I don't need all that shit Sam's be having or whoever. Go to Walmart, nigga. Go to a regular one. And then once again, like shit like this, when motherfuckers be doing panic shopping and shit, I'm good. I don't even got to go panic shop, bro. I'm already Gucci. My goddamn pantry shelf pretty stocked up. My deep freezer pretty stocked up. Dry goods stocked up. Toiletries stocked up. Motherfucker go buy a tube of toothpaste. I get the 3 in a pack or the 5 in a pack or whatever they have. I'm not buying toothpaste every other week. Ain't trying to get caught with your pants down and poop on your ass. You better be ready, man. Always expect the best. Always hope and expect the best. But prepare for the worst, nigga, just in case. Once again, so you don't get caught with your pants down and poop on your butt trying to run out. It's too late now. You can't run like that. That's how the bears get you. It's too late. Do I need a 20-pound bag of rice right now? No. But I might. I might. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'd rather have it and not need it instead of need it and not have it. Just like a gun or a fire extinguisher or a seat belt or anything else. You put your seatbelt on when you drive. Now you don't expect to get in an accident. You know, you expect just to drive and make it to your destination and do what you plan on doing. But you still wear that seatbelt just in case. Just in case the worst might happen. You know, and it might not even be your fault. You know, it'd be some dumb motherfucker out here not paying attention and get you all fucked up. But just in case, put my seatbelt on. You know. You be cooking dinner and breakfast and grilling out and all that shit. You don't plan on burning your house down. You have that smoke detector and them goddamn fire extinguishers handy though. Just in case. That's all. I'm just on some just in case type shit. You know, I lay out my clothes for work the night before, like I'm still going to school, just in case I'm running late in the morning. You know, something like that. Do a lot of shit, you know, just in case. Let me get that big pack of toilet tissue. If I get caught with the poo butt, you out.
Expensive. Everything that needs to be manufactured or refrigerated becomes more expensive. Every person on earth who buys food, pays rent, or fills a gas tank is already feeling this war in their wallet, even if they have never looked at a map of the Middle East. But here is where this story takes a turn that even the most experienced geopolitical analysts did not see coming with full clarity. While the world was focused on oil prices and missile counts and casualty figures, Iran made a move that was not a military move at all. On March 14th, a senior Iranian official told CNN that Tehran was considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The news spread instantly across energy markets and trading floors. Relief was the initial reaction. The strait might reopen, supply might normalize, prices might ease, and then came the condition. The cargo would need to be traded and settled in Chinese yuan, not US dollars. Yuan, read that again, read that. Because if you're going to understand the full weight of what Iran just did, you need to understand what the petrodollar system actually is, why it exists, and why that single condition represents something that no ballistic missile, no drone swarm, and no military operation of any kind could have achieved on its own. Go back to 1971. President Richard Nixon ended the direct convertibility of the US dollar to gold, effectively ending the Bretton Woods international monetary
Took us
system.
off the gold standard.
This was a seismic event in global finance, sometimes called the Nixon shock. Without gold backing, what would give the dollar its value? What would keep the world's nations using it as their primary reserve currency? The answer came in 1974 through a series of agreements negotiated between the United States and Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer at the time. The deal, in its essential form, was elegant and mutually beneficial. Saudi Arabia and the broader OPEC alliance would price and sell all of their oil exclusively in US dollars. In exchange, the United States would provide Saudi Arabia with military protection and security guarantees. The consequences of that arrangement were enormous and long-lasting. Because oil is the single most traded commodity in the world, and because oil had to be purchased in dollars, every nation on Earth that imported energy, which is essentially every nation on Earth, had to first acquire US dollars. They had to hold dollar reserves. They had to participate in dollar-denominated financial systems. They had to effectively rent access to the world's most essential resource through a currency that only the United States could create. This is why the dollar has remained the world's dominant reserve currency for 50 years. Not because of the strength of the American economy alone, not because of American military power alone, but because of the structural lock-in created by the petrodollar system. You need oil. Oil costs dollars. Therefore, you need dollars. It is one of the most elegant economic arrangements in modern history. And it has funded American power, American deficits, and American global influence in ways that most people never fully appreciate. Now, Iran is holding the world's most critical oil choke point and offering to reopen it for yuan. Open for UN.
All right, what is this? Why is the commercial so long,
You
bro?
have to understand what this does to the petrodollar architecture. Every energy importing nation that needs access to Hormuz, every nation that cannot wait for the alternative pipelines, every nation watching its economy slow down as oil prices surge, is now being presented with a choice. Pay in dollars and accept continued uncertainty about whether your tanker makes it through, or switch to yuan and get guaranteed passage. It is what analysts are calling the most elegant economic trap ever constructed in a war zone. And the evidence suggests it was not improvised. It was planned. China has been quietly building the financial plumbing for exactly this moment for years. In 2018, the Shanghai International Energy Exchange launched yuan-denominated crude oil futures.
Yeah, so this is super crazy because so what they're essentially saying, like, use the Chinese currency, it will let you get the oil. So what is America gonna do? Attack all the ships that are getting through using the other currency and start wars with China and all these other countries now? And they're sitting back at us like, nah, we can get our oil. And as soon as we try to move our tanker, they bombing our shit. Yo. It's like, you gonna fight everybody? Or you gonna sit back and take this ass whooping and come to the terms and agreements? I don't know. China already said like they don't want to convert all of their transactions that way for oil because it is unstable. as a new system, but that doesn't mean that they're not participating. They want to be cautious with it. Once again, they're not trying to get bullied either. A win day.
Not to replace the petrodollar overnight, to build the accounts, the settlement systems, the currency swap agreements, and the institutional relationships that would make yuan oil payments possible at scale when the moment came. China's cross-border interbank payment system, known as CIPS, processed the equivalent of $245 trillion in yuan-denominated transactions in 2025 alone. That is a 43% increase from the previous year. The infrastructure was ready, the relationships were in place. And then on February 28th, 2026, the war started, and the Strait of Hormuz became the trigger point for a financial strategy that had been years in the making. Consider what India is doing right now. India is the world's third largest oil importer. It is deeply dependent on Gulf crude. It has been receiving direct diplomatic assurances from Tehran's ambassador that Indian-flagged vessels will receive safe passage through the strait. Those assurances are not coming for free. They're coming because India and Iran have an existing trade relationship that has, in part, already moved toward non-dollar settlement in previous years due to U.S. sanctions. Turkey is in a similar position, navigating carefully between its NATO membership and its energy dependency. And the Gulf states themselves, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait, whose oil exports traditionally flow through Hormuz, are watching the situation with an anxiety that goes far beyond missile defense. Here's something critical that most people do not know. In June 2024, Saudi Arabia quietly allowed its long-standing informal commitment to exclusive dollar pricing for oil to expire. The arrangement that had governed Saudi oil sales since 1974 simply was not renewed. Riyadh signaled openness to accepting yuan, euros, Japanese yen, and Indian rupees for crude sales. The kingdom had already built a $7 billion currency swap agreement with China and had joined the mBridge payment platform, which allows for cross-border yuan transactions. At the time, analysts debated whether this was significant. The skeptics said the dollar's dominance was built on decades of institutional trust and financial infrastructure, not on a formal agreement, and that Saudi openness to alternatives would not translate into actual diversification. The skeptics were partially right. Between June 2024 and February 2026, the share of global oil trade settled in dollars declined by only 3 to 5 percentage points, according to estimates from the Bank for International Settlements. That is real, but modest change. Then the war started, and the pressure became existential rather than theoretical. The key question that every energy importing nation is now asking is not ideological. It is not about loyalty to the United States or affection for China. It is purely practical. If the only way to get reliable oil passage through the world's most critical choke point is to pay in yuan, and if the alternative is watching your economy slow down, your inflation spike, and your population suffer, then what do? The arithmetic of energy desperation, as one analyst put it, is working in Iran's favor. And every week that the strait remains effectively closed or restricted is a week in which the yuan alternative moves from theoretical to operational in the minds of energy ministers around the world. The International Group of Protection and Indemnity Clubs, which provides marine liability insurance for roughly 90% of the world's ocean-going tonnage, has already withdrawn coverage for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. That is not a symbolic gesture. That is the global insurance industry telling you that the risk of transiting this strait in dollars is now uninsurable. When the insurance system pulls back from a trading route, the dollar-based shipping system begins to fracture, because the petrodollar system does not just run on currency agreements. It runs on the assumption that the United States can guarantee safe passage for dollar-denominated oil shipments anywhere on Earth. The U.S. Navy, the aircraft carriers, the Fifth Fleet stationed in Bahrain have been the physical enforcement mechanism of the petrodollar for 5 decades. And right now, that guarantee is being tested in real time in a 30-mile wide strait by a country that has been sanctioned, bombed, and diplomatically isolated, and is still managing to restructure the financial logic of global energy trade from a position of military vulnerability. The speed at which this has moved is breathtaking. Lloyd's List Intelligence reported that only 77 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz in the first half of March 2026. Compare that to the normal figure, which runs into thousands of transits per month, and you understand the scale of the disruption. This is not a temporary blip. Managing to restructure the financial logic of global energy trade from a position of military vulnerability. The speed at which this has moved is breathtaking. Lloyd's List Intelligence reported that only 77 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz in the first half of March 2026. Compare that to the normal figure.
In the first half of March, when we started this year, only 77 ships have passed through when it's normally like a couple thousand ships a week. Yo, that's wild, bro. 77. In the last couple of weeks, only 77 ships made it through.
Which runs into thousands of transits per month. And you understand the scale of the disruption. This is not a temporary blip. The UN World Food Program has issued warnings about the long-term impact on global food prices, because the same strait that carries oil also carries fertilizer precursors. The Fertilizer Institute has stated that nearly 50% of global urea and sulfur exports, as well as 20% of global liquefied natural gas, used as a key feedstock for nitrogen fertilizers, transit through Hormuz. When fertilizer supply chains break down, food prices do not just rise. They can become catastrophic for developing economies that are already operating on the edge. Meanwhile, back in the military dimension of this conflict, the war has continued to escalate in ways that have shocked even seasoned analysts. On the Israeli side, the strategy appears to be systematic decapitation. Having killed Supreme Leader Khamenei on the first day, Israel has continued targeting senior Iranian figures throughout the conflict. Security Chief Ali Larijani was killed in an Israeli strike on March 17th. Larijani was arguably the most important figure in this crisis because he was Iran's lead nuclear negotiator before the war began. He was the pragmatic, experienced diplomat who had been working the diplomatic back channels. Analysts immediately noted that Israel's decision to target him was not random. By removing the one figure who had both the experience and the institutional credibility to negotiate a settlement, Israel may have been deliberately closing the diplomatic window to ensure the conflict continues to its desired conclusion. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said explicitly that the political system remains strong and that Iran's capacity to govern and retaliate has not been diminished. But the loss of Larijani removes a critical piece of the human architecture that any eventual negotiation would depend on. Iran's response to the assassinations was swift and technologically significant. In the overnight hours of March 17th to 18th, Iran fired cluster missiles at central Israel, specifically targeting the Ramat Gan area near Tel Aviv. These are not standard missiles. Cluster missiles use multiple warheads that separate after launch, creating a dispersed target footprint that is significantly harder for air defense systems to fully intercept. Israeli defense officials acknowledged that 2 people were killed and significant property damage was caused, including at a Tel Aviv train station. One senior Israeli official expressed concern that the air raid warning system was not sounding quickly enough for people to reach shelters in time. That is a meaningful admission. Israel's air defense posture, which includes the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow systems, is among the most sophisticated on Earth. And yet, a sustained campaign of this nature is forcing it to consume interceptors at rates that create strategic pressure over time. On the American side, President Trump has found himself in a politically complex position that has no clear historical precedent. He has been openly critical of NATO allies for refusing to join the military effort to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Germany has stated it has no intention of joining the conflict. The European Union's foreign policy chief said European nations have no appetite for military intervention. Trump delayed his planned trip to China, acknowledging that he needs to remain in the United States while the conflict is ongoing. And within his own government, the cracks are showing. Senior counterterrorism official Joe Kent resigned his position publicly, stating that Iran is not a threat and that the war was started due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. That is not a fringe figure making a fringe statement. That is a counterterrorism professional with security clearances saying that the logic of this conflict does not hold up from a genuine American national interest perspective. More than 250 American organizations have signed a letter calling on Congress to halt funding for the war, arguing that the $11.3 billion spent in just the first 6 days is diverting funds from urgent domestic needs. The political cost at home is mounting even as the military campaign continues. He called Iran a paper tiger. Iran closed the world's most critical oil choke point and is offering to reopen it in China's currency. That is not what a paper tiger does. Let us zoom out and look at the full strategic picture as it stands today. The United States and Israel began this conflict with a set of stated objectives: destroy Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, create conditions for regime change, end Iranian influence across the region. 19 days into the conflict, U.S. Central Command reports that it has struck over 7,000 targets in Iran. Iran's missile launch rate has declined from the opening days of the war, with military analysts pointing to depletion of certain missile and launcher stocks, though Iranian officials dispute this characterization and describe it as strategic rationing. Iran's new supreme leader is issuing statements, but has not appeared in public, creating uncertainty about the internal power dynamics at the top of the regime. Security forces are actively suppressing celebrations that have broken out among segments of the Iranian population. The internet inside Iran remains largely shut down, with access restricted to select users. None of this looks like the regime is about to collapse. What it looks like instead is a regime under extraordinary pressure that has nevertheless managed to make a series of strategic moves that are reshaping the global order in ways that Washington may not have fully anticipated. The Hormuz blockade, the UN condition, the systematic targeting of Gulf country infrastructure to make the political cost of hosting American forces visible to those governments. The IRGC's declaration that all US financial institutions and multinational companies in the Middle East are legitimate targets. These are not the moves of a regime fighting for survival in a purely military sense. These are the moves of a regime that has decided that if it is going down, it will pull the existing financial architecture down with it and try to build something new in the rubble with China as its economic partner. And China is watching all of this very carefully. Beijing has not made any dramatic moves. It has not intervened militarily. It has not made any formal announcements about the Yuan for passage arrangement. It does not need to. Every day that this conflict continues,
He said
every day
it's
that energy importing nations are
Damn.
forced to confront the practical reality of non-dollar oil settlement, every
Yo,
day
Hart.
that the petrodollar system is visibly unable to
He
guarantee
said that ain't
the security it was supposed to guarantee,
Shit.
China's alternative financial architecture becomes more attractive.
Bro, when the goddamn head of goddamn what he said his motherfucker was basically the nigga who know everything. He's like, I can't do this no more. I seen the letter. I didn't read the whole letter, but I did see like his official resignation letter. I was like, oh, that motherfucker put that shit on paper. Mr. President. God damn, bro. What you doing, man? I ain't gonna lie though, man. I still think if Kamala Harris was president, this shit would be worse. I don't know how it can be worse than World War III, but it just feels like somehow it would have been worse than this. It would have been World War III, and we still would have had like all the shit in the schools and everything going on at the same time. Goddamn tampons in the boys' bathroom and kitty litter boxes in the fucking girls' bathroom at school. What the fuck is y'all doing? When my child identifies as a feline, did you and your kid retarded? You and that little motherfucker retarded. See, I can say retarded again and feel comfortable. So I guess there were a few perks, but that shit ain't evening out, man. You know what I'm saying? The scales ain't balanced, man. Scales ain't balanced with this one. Got feces on his face. Shithead. Yo, when the nigga who know everything about all the intelligence and everything, when he be like, I don't think this is a good move. Hey, you need to listen to that dude. If you don't listen to nobody else, the dude who know all the stuff, listen to him.
Policy chief said European nations have no appetite for military intervention. Trump delayed his planned trip to China, acknowledging that he needs to remain in the United States while the conflict is ongoing. And within his own government, the cracks are showing. Senior counterterrorism official Joe Kent resigned his position publicly, stating that Iran is not a threat. Remain in the United States while the conflict is
Senior
ongoing. And
counterintelligence.
within his own government, the cracks are showing. Senior counterterrorism official Joe Kent resigned his position
Counterterrorism.
publicly, stating that Iran is not a threat.
He's the senior guy. He's the top. He the head dog about terrorism, attacks, and the freedom of America in the Middle East. This nigga said, "Hey, them niggas not no threat. Bomb them anyway. Bomb them anyway. I just told you they not a threat. You know what? I quit. Nigga. Y'all about to go down, and I ain't going down with it. Look here. Get this letter of resignation. That motherfucker got a fat bank account anyway, man. He probably just retired early. I'm just retired early, you know. I'll be a consultant for some company that makes some stuff or whatever, man, but I can't do this no more. Shit. Bring the house down, go ahead. I ain't gonna be in there. Hold on, I'm texting my buddy real quick. Yeah, my buddy's texting me about the videos. I sent that video to a few people who don't really watch my YouTube channel, but they still fuck with me though.
And that the war was started due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. That is not a fringe figure making a fringe statement. That is a counterterrorism professional with security clearances saying that the logic of this conflict does not hold up from a genuine American national interest perspective. More than 250 American organizations have signed a letter calling on Congress to halt funding for the war, arguing that the $11.3 billion spent in just the first 6 days is diverting funds from urgent domestic needs. The political cost at home is mounting even as the military campaign continues. He called Iran a paper tiger. Iran closed the world's most critical oil choke point and is offering to reopen it in China's currency. That is not what a paper tiger does. Let us zoom out and look at the full strategic picture as it stands today. The United States and Israel began this conflict with a set of stated objectives: destroy Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, create conditions for regime change, end Iranian influence across the region. 19 days into the conflict, U.S. Central Command reports that it has struck over 7,000 targets in Iran. Iran's missile launch rate has declined from the opening days of the war, with military analysts pointing to depletion of certain missile and launcher stocks, though Iranian officials dispute this characterization and describe it as strategic rationing. Iran's new supreme leader is issuing statements, but has not appeared in public, creating uncertainty about the internal power dynamics at the top of the regime. Security forces are actively suppressing celebrations that have broken out among segments of the Iranian population. The internet inside Iran remains largely shut down, with access restricted to select users. None of this looks like the regime is about to collapse. What it looks like instead is a regime under extraordinary pressure that has nevertheless managed to make a series of strategic moves that are reshaping the global order in ways that Washington may not have fully anticipated. The Hormuz blockade, the UN condition, the systematic targeting of Gulf country infrastructure to make the political cost of hosting American forces visible to those governments, the IRGC's declaration that all U.S. financial institutions and multinational companies in the Middle East are legitimate targets. These are not the moves of a regime fighting for survival in a purely military sense. These are the moves of a regime that has decided that if it is going down, it will pull the existing financial architecture down with it and try to build something new in the rubble with China as its economic partner. And China is watching all of this very carefully. Beijing has not made any dramatic moves. It has not intervened militarily. It has not made any formal announcements about the Yuan for Passage arrangement. It does not need to. Every day that this conflict continues, every day that energy importing nations are forced to confront the practical reality of non-dollar oil settlement. Every day that the petrodollar system is visibly unable to guarantee the security it was supposed to guarantee, China's alternative financial architecture becomes more attractive by comparison. China does not need to fire a single weapon in this war to be one of its principal strategic beneficiaries. There's a phrase that financial historians will likely use when they write about this period. The war did not create the threat to the petrodollar, it revealed the contradiction that was already there. For the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia, the nation that formalized the petrodollar in 1974, has been simultaneously pursuing deeper economic integration with China while maintaining its security relationship with the United States. Chinese investment, Chinese technology, Chinese market access, all flowing into the kingdom while the currency architecture still officially pointed toward Washington. The Iran war made it impossible to sustain both positions at once. The moment of reckoning could not be deferred any longer. And so, where does this leave us?
I've been building toward this moment from day one. I am confident that this race puts Venue on a path to becoming fully funded. What does fully funded at?
The Strait of Hormuz is effectively a permission to choke point right now, a narrow passage through which oil moves, but only on Tehran's terms. The insurance market has withdrawn from it. The dollar-based shipping system is fractured along it. And at the end of that passage, a new financial condition is being offered. Pay in yuan and pass. Continue in dollars and face uncertainty. 11.7 million barrels of Iranian crude oil moved from Iranian ports to Chinese refineries in the first 15 days of March alone, according to available figures. The strait is not a total blockade. It is a selective one. And the selection criteria are shifting the global financial order in real time. No one is saying the petrodollar is dead today. The dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency, underpinned by the depth and liquidity of U.S. capital markets, decades of institutional trust, and the absence of any single credible alternative. A full transition away from dollar-denominated oil trade would require global coordination of financial infrastructure, currency swap agreements, settlement systems, and institutional relationships on a scale that does not yet exist. This is a process that takes years, possibly decades, not weeks. But what the 2026 Hormuz crisis has done is accelerate the
It'll
process,
take in the next 10
compressing
years.
of gradual de-dollarization into weeks of crisis decision-making. It has forced energy importing nations to build the muscle memory of non-dollar oil settlement under the pressure of real scarcity. It has demonstrated in live conditions that the United States cannot guarantee safe passage for dollar-denominated oil shipments through the world's most critical choke point. And it has shown that the alternative financial infrastructure that China spent years quietly building, the yuan futures, the CIPS payment system, the currency swaps, the diplomatic relationships, was not theoretical. It was operational. And the moment the Strait of Hormuz became a contested space, it became the most relevant financial system on the planet for the nations that needed to keep their economies running. The tanker captain sitting in his wheelhouse has a decision to make. He has always made it in dollars. That is what the last 50 years have looked like. But today, there's another option on the table. And the longer this war goes on, the more normal that option begins to feel. That is not a military victory for Iran. Iran is suffering enormously. The human cost of this conflict is staggering and real, but it is a strategic outcome that was not in the original war plan. It is the unintended consequence of attacking a country that had nothing left to lose and a well-prepared financial partner waiting in the wings.
In Asia,
Here's
China keeps saying this is
democracynow.org.
the Asian century. However they can get it.
Your coworker asks you to review a PR, and then you find out they didn't even test their changes. You're probably going to be a little upset. This is how it can feel working with coding agents. Cursor's agents can now use a computer to test their changes and record videos of their work. Let me show you.
Good evening, everybody, and warmest welcome back to Horizon's discussion to the Center for International Relations in Sustainable Development for the platform that fosters global dialogue and understanding. Today, it gives me an exceptional privilege to host His Holiness, the Serbian Patriarch. Thank you very much, Your Holiness, for being with us to greet ambassadors of some very friendly countries. To wish a warm welcome from our friends and partners from Zijin, who have been incredibly supportive in putting this event together, to our many guests who came from very far away to be with us this evening for this exciting, what I hope to be a very exciting discussion on global affairs, to launch the newest issue of our journal, Horizons. The 32nd volume of the journal deals with Asia Pacific. And we decided to give it a very bold title, the Asia Pacific Century. We're going to see in the course of discussion whether this is an appropriate title or not. But I cannot think of a better interlocutor and a dearer interlocutor to me personally. Tonight's guest is one of the godfathers of the Center for International Relations and Sustainable Development, actually a person who gave us the idea to call the center that way, one of the founding members, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's currently the university professor and the director for the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. He's also the president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and also the member of the Academy at the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences at the Vatican. And I only started listing Jeff's biography. It'll probably take us forever to go through the most important things in the Jeff's biography, but I think it is important to say that he served as an advisor to 3 consecutive UN Secretary Generals. He is a person who got his PhD, his doctorate from Harvard. He's got 45 additional honorary doctorates. Nobody that I have ever met has 45 honorary doctorates from universities around the world. He was my mentor. He was the person that most decisively shaped my thinking and my academic career, and later on my career in public service, domestic and international. One of the smartest, one of the most knowledgeable, and one of the most honest people that I have met. Author of many books, author of many articles, including the articles in the Horizons, for which we are exceptionally grateful. Not a first time that he is in Belgrade, not a first time that he is our guest. So without further ado, join me now in wishing a very warm welcome to Professor Jeffrey Sachs to Belgrade.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to be back, and great to be back with you, Vuk. Congratulations on the 32nd edition. This is, it's the best foreign affairs journal in the world now, I think, without question. It is shaped a little bit like another journal that some of you may know, Foreign Affairs. It has eclipsed Foreign Affairs, definitely. In a very serious way. Foreign Affairs is now, it's a little bit of it's a little psychological, but the U.S. is in a very neurotic state, as you know, and Foreign Affairs is to help heal the neurosis, because all Foreign Affairs does is tell you every article how great the U.S. is. But what this tells you is about the world, and it's really a great accomplishment, and I'm very proud to be published in the pages, but I'm very, very glad for it to exist, because we don't have many places that are honest, objective, not paid by the U.S. military industrial complex or paid by some other special interest, but just telling the truth and having a wide variety of views. So I really, really appreciate it. It's also very nice to have 2 of your most star students next to each other because I have Bozan Arjelic over here also, who many of you know. And between the two, it's just wonderful to see such incredible contribution and accomplishment in the world. And so I'm really, really touched.
Thank you very
I
much.
first came here, by the way, 36 years ago to Belgrade. That was the first trip, 1989. The country was in a mess, and it was but a very beautiful place. And I could not believe that it. I mean, frankly, I've loved this place from the first moment that I came. So I'm very, very happy to be back. But a lot of tumult and a lot of excitement, and Vuk, we're in another very interesting moment in the world. So a lot to talk about.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I know that you've always been a great fan and supporter of our country. It's great to have you with us. But let me start with the theme of this particular volume of Horizons, which is Asia-Pacific Century. I am now teaching in Paris for the third year. I've been a professor of practice in international governance and diplomacy at the Paris School of International Affairs at Sciences Po. And about a month ago, as a part of my graduate class, I gave a class on Asia. And my guest lecturer was another great mind, Kishore Mahbubani. He was a great Singaporean diplomat, the founder of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Service in Singapore. And he started off his lecture to my students. And my students are graduate students in Paris, mostly European. So he started off with a hypothesis, which was a very interesting hypothesis. And he said, I asked him a question, does the future belong to Asia, Kishore? So he said, if I were giving this lecture 100 years ago, in 1925, I would say that Asia was the past, that Europe was the present, and that America was the future. But now it's 2025, and things have changed a little bit in the world. And now I can say that Europe is the past, and that America is the present, and that Asia is the future. This is what 100 years makes. So I'm going to start off by asking you whether you agree with Kishore and whether you agree also with the our subtitle, which is Ready to Go, Asia Pacific Century, Ready to Go, Go referring to an ancient and complex Asian game of Go, which is more complex than chess and which is all about strategic patience and long-term vision rather than aiming at decapitating the enemy's king, the way chess works.
Well, I agree in part, but not entirely. And but what I do think is very important for all of us to understand, I think we all feel it also almost every day in some sense, is that we are at a watershed moment in history. I don't think it's exactly passing the baton, say, from the United States to China, which is how it's often discussed. What I do think is true is that we're at the end of a 500-year cycle in history. 500 years ago was the beginning of Europe's ascent to global power. And it came basically, when one looks back, because of two decisive voyages at the end of the 15th century. Christopher Columbus thought he was going to India, and he ended up in the Americas instead. Vasco da Gama was aiming to go to Asia. He circled the Cape of Good Hope, the southern tip of Africa, and with the help of Arab sailors, made it to India. So within 10 years, 1492 for Columbus and 1498 for Vasco da Gama's voyage, suddenly Europe had sea routes to the whole world. And part of the world was not even known, of course, to the Europeans up to that point, the Americas. This, in my view, changed human history for the next 5 centuries. It's a long story, of course, exactly what happened. But basically, Europe's control over the Americas was a decisive change of relative power in the world. Even that story of Europe's control over the Americas needs a footnote that's interesting, because a few European conquerors conquered a continent that had about 100 million people in it in the year 1492 when Christopher Columbus arrived. And so you might ask, how did Europe conquer the Americas, which had native populations all through the Americas? And the answer was not military conquest primarily. They brought diseases, which the New World populations didn't know. So the New World was conquered by yellow fever, by typhus, by plague, by malaria, by other diseases brought by the Europeans. But the point is that within a century, the native population had been reduced by 95%, and the Europeans had 2 giant continents for minerals, for gold, for silver, for agriculture, for colonization. And this was a change of human history. And I raise this point because, to my mind, this is the start of a 500-year period. By around 1750, the European...
So the European germs killed the natives of this land. But when the Europeans went to Africa to get slaves, the germs didn't kill the Africans. I don't know how that worked. Somebody gotta explain this shit to me, man. I ain't no germologist or nothing like that, but if a people have not encountered a certain type of virus, disease, bacteria, fungus, or whatever that may be harmful or detrimental to their health, and then someone comes in carrying that same disease, virus, or whatever, shouldn't it affect all people the same way? Our niggas just superhumans who don't get sick from the plague and cholera and all this other shit. You just immune to that shit? What the hell? Damn, we passed 5 o'clock. I didn't even know. We had an hour yet? All right, we might do 2 hours. I might finish this shirt, man. Honestly, I'm almost done with the damn shirt. It's Friday. It ain't like I got work in the morning or nothing. And I don't know. Napalm ain't been playing no video games with me recently, so you know that shit dead. Shit, I might sit right here until we get this low. It ain't even a whole lot left. I might can do it in the next 30 minutes if I quit running my mouth and try to fuck around with these YouTube videos. But no, I ain't gonna do that. What I will do is take a little bathroom break. Take a little bathroom break, and I'll be right back. So we can try to wrap this shirt up.
Global empires, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, which were the ocean empires, had enough power now to start conquering Asia and Africa. They actually couldn't make it into Africa yet because malaria was a protective barrier for Africa. In fact, every time the Europeans went to Africa to try to conquer, they were defeated by the mosquito more than the local populations. what enabled Africa to be colonized, which only happened at the end of the 19th century, was gin and tonic. Because tonic is quinine, and quinine is an ancient Peruvian cure for fever. And it was studied by the British. The seeds were stolen and brought back to Kew Gardens. It was cultivated. It was introduced into gin and tonic. And then the British could sit on their verandas and rule over Africa by the end of the 19th century, protected from malaria. In Asia, where the disease burden didn't protect, by the end of the 18th century, Europe really started to beat up the Asians, because by then Europe was militarily dominant. It had better technology. For many reasons of the story that I'm telling, a scientific revolution accompanied this age of globalism. And Europe, basically from around 1750 onward, started to colonize Asia. And India, for example, by the end of the 18th century was substantially in British hands and fell completely to British hands in 1857. And when it came to China, China was the most powerful empire in the world, the most populous country in the world, and it hadn't really been bothered by the outside, and it hadn't bothered the outside for many centuries, in fact. So when the British arrived in what's called the Macartney mission to China in 1795 and met Qianlong, the emperor of the Qing dynasty, the emperor said, "We don't want to trade with you. You have nothing we want," and sent the mission away. And the British came back 44 years later, this time with gunboats in the Pearl River Delta. And that was the first Opium War.
The Opium War.
Telling the Chinese, you're going to buy our opium whether you want it or not. And in fact, the Chinese did not want the opium. I'm thinking, as Donald Trump talks about narco trafficking, he wouldn't like actually narcotics traffickers saying you have to open up your borders to our trade. But that's what the British did to the Chinese in 1839. And what ensued was the first Opium War from 1839 to 1842. And then the next decade, the second Opium War, joined by the French, this time burning down the Summer Palace. If you know the Summer Palace in Beijing, it's one of the most beautiful places and historic places. It should not be burned down. But this was European empires showing their dominance of Asia. And then China went into civil war, perhaps the most devastating civil war in history, the Taiping Rebellion, it's called, but it was really essentially a civil war. But the point is that by 1900, Europe completely dominated the world. And that was the world that was expected to last forever. 11 years ago, VUC held a very wonderful conference here on the 100th anniversary of World War I. That's notable because that was the beginning of the end of the European-led world. Because as of 1900, there was almost no way for Asian or for African or for Latin American countries to have a chance in this world. Britain basically controlled almost everything, and the parts that Britain didn't control were controlled by France or controlled by a few other powers. The United States was still not even barely present because it had spent the 19th century not on international empires, but on creating a continental scale empire in North America because it had to defeat all of the native populations still. So 1900, Europe dominated. 1914, for reasons that are so tragic, absurd, stupid, without any justification that you could think of in a deep way, Europe went into a cataclysmic civil war. Started nearby here in Sarajevo, of course, for absolutely no reason, I would say. No deep reason, no justification, no fundamental conflicts, no struggle for survival. It was a booming period in history. But Europe thought it would be a glorious 1-month war, and it turned out to be a 4-year bloodbath, followed by a Great Depression, followed by another bloodbath. I mentioned all of this basic history because Europe defeated itself so that by 1950, this European-led world would undergo a fundamental change. And that was the rise of the non-Western world, suddenly permissible, allowed, because European empires had destroyed each other in the process. So the People's Republic of China finally escaped from a century of outside depredation. First the British, the French, the British, the French, the Americans, then the Japanese, then the Japanese, then the Japanese. And then finally, peace and the People's Republic of China established in 1949. And India gained its independence in 1947. And Indochina would have gained its independence around the same time in the early 1950s. But when the French decided to leave, the United States decided to come in and try to maintain imperial rule, but US imperial rule. And of course, that led to 15 years of bloodshed in the Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos war. So from my point of view, what happened basically in history is Europe came to dominate the world. Europe destroyed its own dominance in a 50-year period from in a 30-year period from 1914 to 1945. In 2 bloodbaths that were European bloody-mindedness. The US took over the British Empire in 1945, almost like handing the baton in a relay race. The Soviet Union, mainly Russia, it was a dominant empire for Eurasia already, but it became one of the 2 world's superpowers in 1945 and onward. And what began in 1950, but it wasn't really understood, was the opening for the rest of the world to find its place in a world that had been controlled by Europe. And the control is interesting. What did the European empires do? They did 3 things. They extracted anything they could of value, so minerals and agriculture products and everything else. Second, they prevented the local populations from getting a decent education or having even the basic infrastructure. And they prevented industrialization from taking place because that was for the European empires. There was only one exception to that, Asia, and that was Japan, for a lot of very interesting reasons. But other than that, basically, Europe stopped the progress outside, and the end of the European empires allowed a natural process because there's smart people everywhere. There are entrepreneurs everywhere. There's business energy everywhere. There's experience everywhere. But it was bottled up by European dominance. That was ended. The US wasn't exactly the same kind of empire. I'm sure we'll talk about
I'm going to
that.
talk about that.
But just to say, we arrived in the year 2000 in really a new world. And what is this new world? The new world is that China did such a good job that it had become already, I would say 25 years ago, a superpower. And now it is a peer of the United States in technology and in its military might and in every other way. And that's something different. Russia, the same way. Russia was regarded by the United States first as an enemy during the Cold War, and then as a has-been after 1991. And that was also delusional by the US and Europe, that Russia, we don't have to care, we can do whatever we want, we can expand NATO, we can try to topple regimes around Russia, we can surround Russia, we can defeat Russia, we can bring down Russia. So that was another delusion. So now we have a multipolar world. That's the fundamental point. And just to finish, because I want to say why I partly disagree with the title, I don't think it's really the Asian century. I think it's the world century now.
As the owner of a small carpentry company, my expertise lies in millwork, not insurance. Next makes getting insurance super easy. Go to the app and get your certificate.
Because I think that, yes, Asia in the sense, China, a major power, absolutely wonderful in my view. India will be a major power in the 21st century and a very important and positive one. But when we come back and do this event in 2050, Vuk, which we will, promise me, we'll say, look what Africa did during that 25-year period. And you'll say, and Jeff, you said so.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we're gonna get to that, but I wanna pick on this particular historical parallel. You said, you talked about the European empires, reaching out, and America in a way, like an offspring, like an offshoot of the European empires, dealing with certain parts of the world in a way that you just described. How do you contrast it with China's historical characteristics and presence? China has been around for arguably longer than any of the Western empires. And what is the contrast of the historical experience of China in comparison to the
Not
conquest?
arguably, it's just the fact that China's old as shit. China's been here
Tells
forever.
us about the future, because you read the press, you are watching the news, and there's a lot of talk that you should be scared of the rise of China, that China is somehow dangerous, that it is rising so hard that we should all be worried about the rise of China. Should we be worried about the rise of China, and what history is telling us in this regard?
First, the answer is no, we should not be worried. We should be pleased because this is good news for everybody. The world is better off when there's prosperity in as much of the world as possible. We are not in a zero-sum struggle in the world. This is the most important point about economics. Unlike some primitive thinking that has lasted throughout actually centuries and became very popular in the 19th and 20th century, the idea that life is inevitably a struggle and it's either them or us is not true.
But that's very Western philosophy, right?
Yes, and it also there's a biological analogy, and it was even named after that. Darwin said we have a struggle of natural selection, and he got the idea of how that worked from a British economist named Thomas Robert Malthus, who wrote in 1798 that there will always be more people than the earth can sustain, and so life will always be near subsistence level, and there will always be some kind of struggle. And when Darwin read that, he said, aha, that's how natural selection works. And he credits Malthus in The Origin of Species with that insight. Then some very bad economists and social thinkers took scientific Darwinism and said that applies to society. Society is a struggle for survival. And so by the end of the 19th century, there were two variants of that idea in Europe, very widespread. One was the national struggle for survival, and the other was the race struggle for survival. And Hitler combined the two. Nazism was a theory of a national race struggle for survival. And Hitler's theory specifically was we need living room. So we have to defeat the Slavs so that we have living room, Lebensraum. And that was a Darwinian, Malthusian, terrible economics because we are not struggling for survival in economics. Economic well-being comes from technology and skills. It's not limited by our physical resources if we're clever on how we use them. Of course, we can be stupid how we use them. But if we're clever, it's not that either the Chinese get it or we get it. This is ridiculous. It takes someone as primitive as the President of the United States to think that way.
Damn.
So, excuse me, I can say that. You shouldn't say that. But in any event, the point is, we are not in a
He called that nigga
zero-sum
primitive.
struggle. So I'm not at all
Damn, that's a hell of an
afraid
insult.
of China. I rather like the food, the culture, the sightseeing, the people, the friends, the students, the colleagues, the ideas, the good governance, the BYD vehicles. I like it all. Why should I be worried about it? That's not a threat. Any of it is not a threat. I can't see what the threat could possibly be. And then I see these lists. Who's number one? Who's number two? And I said, your competitor journal, every article is to reassure Americans we're number one. China's about to collapse. No, it isn't. Not even remotely about to collapse. But the idea that there's a ranking of countries, it doesn't even make sense to think about it in those terms. Now, having said all of that, China's doing extremely well because actually the Chinese governance system has turned out to be extremely effective. The planning system, which I learned as a student, don't do. So believe me, we don't have any planning in the United States. It's just what the president tweets every 15 minutes is our plan right now. But China is in a meticulous process right now. It's been going on for well over a year at a detail level to complete the 15th plan. And the 15th plan, which I've read a number of drafts, has a very detailed discussion of particular sectors, industries, technologies that China will now work on over the next 10 years, because even though it's a 5-year plan, it's a 10-year horizon, that it will work on to develop. And that's why China actually is the world leader in so many of the current technologies that we have, because China's been working on it from a long-term point of view. So that's been a very, very successful process. But a threat? No. Just something quite interesting.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Because you and I did this simulation in September at Columbia University. I mean, obviously, this can all be interrupted if somebody provokes a conflict.
Yes.
And we're going to get to talk about the war in Ukraine in a minute. But you and I made this simulation with the students, simulating the Taiwan crisis situation, which, if I remember well, led us dangerously close to a conflict, which could be the end of everything. So how worried are you about a potential conflict in East Asia interrupting the natural processes, the peaceful rise, the harmonious cooperation, and so on and so forth?
I'm very worried all the time about a conflict. And the reason is that we've had several of them in human history. We've had several of them as we discussed, as I mentioned, we had 2 complete massive suicidal wars that had certainly no legitimate reason, and at least the first war had no even clear reason except a lot of ricochet effects of different countries worrying about their position vis-a-vis other countries. Germany worried about Russia on one side and Britain on the other side, and the Austrians worried about what was happening in the Balkans and so forth, but no deep reason to destroy Europe. So we know that we can do things that are terribly stupid. When I look at European leaders right now, I'm very worried. They make no sense to me. I don't understand one word of what Mrs. van der Leyen is thinking, of what Kaja Kallas is thinking, of what Chancellor Merz is thinking, of what Macron is thinking. None of it makes sense to me. What are they talking about? And if they're so worried about Russia, why don't they pick up the phone and have a talk? Because if you're really worried about your neighbor, meet your neighbor. But no, they can't meet their neighbor. That would be wrong. That would be appeasement. So there's so many crazy ideas right now. How could you not be worried? And in the United States, there is a drumbeat of China being an enemy. Of course, by people who have never been to China, who will never go to China. My general advice to the US Congress is get a passport. Go see the world. And stop talking just for a moment to look at how things really are. So I'm very worried, but I'm worried, Vuk, because in a nuclear age, it all just goes much faster and much more dangerously. We have hypersonic missiles everywhere. We have space warfare, cyber warfare, massive potential for unconstrained disaster. And I don't think our leadership is up to it in this world. So that's a general matter. I see in recent weeks maybe a little bit of toning down by the US actually in this so-called national security strategy, which is an absurd document in many ways, but it's not an anti-China document, and it's not an anti-Russia document. It's an anti-all small countries document that we will go beat you up because we are the greatest country in the world. So says the United States. But to large countries, it's actually not posing the large countries as a big threat. This may be a glint of insight actually in the midst of a lot of confusion. But the insight level is very, very low. And we were talking earlier, the newspaper that I've been reading for 60 years, at least, the New York Times, ran 2 stories this week, one about the need to prepare for war, and one about the need to confront the authoritarianism of China and Russia, kind of a
Oh yeah, that shirt. We about to wrap this thing up.
simple-minded,
Oh yeah,
foolish.
almost. We right at
of
2 hours.
rhetoric.
It is right
But
at
that's
6 o'clock.
a
Yeah,
leading
it's all good, man.
newspaper.
I just got this little
It's not
blue piece right there to
actually
do.
Trump's
And that's
policy.
a-
I'm no fan of Trump, as you can imagine, but I have to say I've been no fan of any American president for the last 40 years. So this is
All these
just
motherfuckers,
a general matter.
Let's then talk about the war that is still going on, which is the war in Ukraine. And of course, as you might imagine, it takes a lot of interest here. And there are direct repercussions from that war, including economic repercussions on this country.
What up?
Through the sanctions
A little bit more.
regime
We're gonna
and how it,
go up this
it
up.
affects our politics
For
and
sure.
our relations with the world.
Honestly,
So
tomorrow morning we'll work on the braids, adding a little bit more contrast and some of the more prominent section like right here. I'm actually thinking like the dreads may be done. This pink shirt, bro, we might not touch that shit no more. Like maybe on some of these folds right here. Just hit some of the highlights on some of the peaks. And call that shit a wrap. I ain't even gonna hold you. Do the hair. Add a few little highlights in the glasses on the rim, some shit like that. oh, this shit is almost done, nigga. We about to be wrapping it up. Is that paint too? Is that black paint too wet for me to do that? It might be. That black paint might be too wet. Right there. I ain't fucking up too bad though. Just a little bit. I'll fix it later. Next time around. I'll fix it next time. Mhm. Mhm. Something like that. I'm tracking black. Son of a bitch. I knew I was gonna do that. You're gonna fuck that shit up some kind of way. All right, this little shoulder ain't got, like I said, just a few little highlight strips here. Bring that down a little bit. One right here. And then one on the bottom of that dark line at the top. Right here. Mm-hmm. That little blender. Yo, that's a fucking wrap. All right, guys, that's a wrap on that shirt. I ain't gonna hold you. Mm-hmm. You just do it like that, you know what I'm saying? Ain't trying to put too much pressure down. Keep it light work. Ain't trying to apply too much pressure. I think I done did it. Ha cha 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 cha. Ha cha 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 cha. Erase that like it was never there. Like it was never there. And didn't see anything. If you know, like I know, better keep your eyes closed. What happened? Oh. Alright, got them brushes done. The brushes done cleaned up. Make sure we turn that off. Grab my phone. We did turn the heat on in here. It was kind of chilly. Alright, turn the heaters off. Bang. Bang. Turn the speaker off. What else? What else? I guess that's it. I might not bring the laptop down. I don't know. I might work on some shit. I'm not sure yet. I made that video yesterday, man. I probably just chilled and like close my pretzels up so they don't go stale. All right, guys, that's it for us today. That's pretty good. We did 2 hours. Basically, at the last few steps of this piece right here. And on Sunday, we might be working on something different on Sunday. Well, I hope everybody has a lovely evening, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. We're out of here.